Yo, what's up, everyone? It's your boy Jacko. So go. You either know or you don't. First, like always, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate you all and the support you guys give me. It has been amazing. And again, just as a courtesy, if you have not watched yesterday's anime episode of Black Clover, you need to do that. You're running late, you're running behind, but luckily, the hype train hasn't quite left the station. That's not going to leave the station for some time, because that episode, I'm thinking about it now, and that episode is literally going to go down in history. That was just that was some wild animation. The choreography was on point. Everything they needed to get across got across perfectly. You need to go watch it if you haven't. If you have, go watch that shit 3 more times, because that was so crazy. Anyway, here's the theory. You guys have heard me talk a lot about how I believe Licht is the fallen son of Licht, and you've heard me talk about Moloch as well. What you haven't heard me talk about yet, because I haven't gone over it, it's really something I was planning on waiting before we got some more contextual evidence, and I guess we might have some if we do add some headcanon in there, which is something I'm okay with doing. And if you know this channel at all, you know a lot of this is headcanon mixed with contextual evidence and all that good stuff, and lore and all that. But today I do want to talk about the other twin. This is kind of going to relate to the video that I put about Licht and putting things into perspective. And that was probably my least popular or least accepted theory, which I don't know why, because I've been harping on that for months now, like almost half a year. But that one, a lot of people were just not really agreeing with it. I politely disagree with you guys for disagreeing with me, so how about that? No, I'm not telling you guys how to think, but I do think there is enough evidence to give us the fact that Licht could be the son of Licht, at least, if not also Satan in this story. So I want to go over a few things first before I start getting into this theory. Number one, when I say Licht is the Satan of this story, we have to realize Licht is not his actual name. Licht is the name given to him by Licht. Licht was nameless this whole time. And Licht means, or it's actually Lieb, in, I think it's German, means love. So this is something Licht gave him. However, there is, if we go to my theories on how I believe Dante's devil is not actually Lucifero, it's Belphegor, then the real Lucifero in this story, I think the reason why we're calling him Lucifero instead of Lucifer is for the rest of the story to actually make sense. So Lucifero would be just an offshoot name of Lucifer, of course. It's actually the Latin name. I think it's just as simple as that. But I think Licht's real name, instead of Satan in this story, because Satan doesn't have much of a meaning behind it, except for, the guy who does all the dastardly deeds. So I think Licht's real name is actually going to be Lucifer instead of Satan in this story. So then that way we do get a differential between the names. And then for those of you that are not caught up with all the lore that we've gone over, there is a character called Lucifuge Rofocal, which is actually where Lucifero is in the clipot. When you look at any clipot, that is Lucifuge Rofocal, which is the lieutenant or general of hell, who serves under Lucifer. So I think that's the route Tabata is going. Now, to kind of get into the theory, let's just start from somewhat the beginning. We have Licht and Tetia getting married. Now, something we came to find out is that Tetia was pregnant with twins. Now, if we run with this theory that Licht is Lucifer, I'm going to call him Lucifer. I don't want you guys to get him mixed up with Lucifero, so please don't do that. He's pregnant with Lucifer, and I say Lucifer because of this. The name Lucifer means the bearer of light. And so we have Licht, who has light magic, and Tetia, who's got wind magic, but a brother who has light magic. So it's a really interesting combination of the two, and her brother is a four-leaf mage, and her suitor is a four-leaf mage as well, which puts Tetia in this really strange spot, because she's obviously got the same lineage as a four-leaf mage, but then also ends up hooking up with a four-leaf mage. So what does this do to a bloodline? So we bring Lucifer, which is the light bearer, and then we're going to get to the other twin. I will go into the meaning of his name as we get into this theory. But we find out that Tetia's is not born with twins, but is pregnant with twins. And Tetia, this is something like Sekre totally forgot, by the way. This is my least favorite part about the series. I wish Tabata maybe didn't throw it in there at all, because there's no reason to forget something so significant. That's like not the highlight, but like the climax of one's life that Sekre had, and she totally forgot. So I don't know. That's just strange to me. I probably would have skipped past that if I were the author. Anyway, Elf Massacre happens. Licht turns into this ancient demon, the strongest one that we've seen. These other two don't seem to stack up as high, and that's for good reason, I feel like, because, as I've said before, the first part of this might be a bit of a refresher and a condensed form of everything I've ever harped on, but just bear with me, because we'll need it for the later part of this theory. So, I think when Licht was using this forbidden magic, remember, Licht sits at Keter, and Keter is the highest throne on the Tree of Life. So if he uses forbidden magic, then it's going to be part of the highest forbidden magic, but he also uses not the forbidden stones, but the magic stones to enhance this further. So I think what ends up happening is that he ends up possibly creating an even lower level of the clip-art. And this is what I always talk about, is Tabata is creating a somewhat creation story. And we don't have the full lore mapped out in this universe yet. I think it's being finalized as we're going on. This is kind of what I'm finding. But through this, I do believe he ends up creating a lower level of the Clipot below Lucifer, or Lucifero in this story, and Belial. Which is why it explains Zagrid did not know what was going on with Licht and how he attained this extremely high level of forbidden magic. And doing this, I think that it required the life of probably someone close. Because with, what's the saying? With great power comes great responsibility. So, and it's much like, let's take, what's her name? Magicula and Vonica's curse warding magic. These are curses that can serve the user, but ends up coming at a cost. Kind of like what we see with the disciples who explode, with the benefit of not being able to die once the curse has run its course. Then their life is finally paid. So I believe it's something to that effect that we see, and the price that was paid was Liabe's soul, or Lucifer's soul, and I think his magic, and I still stand by that, his magic got sucked into this reincarnation thing, or possibly he just got yeeted down to the lowest part of the clip-art. And this is where it gets kind of hard to explain, because we're still missing some pieces, and once this part is filled in, we can probably debunk Black Clover, like, overall. But I think his magic got caught up into the reincarnation magic, and it would have been, again, credit to Quan for finding this one out, Aether magic. Now, remember, if you go back to the Awesome Morning Star video, I do talk to you guys about how the Morning Star is attributed to the rising star of Venus, which is not a star, but the people back then didn't know that. And Lucifer is actually known as the god of the east wind. And they do parallel that to Aether and Zeus birthing. Or what, did he birth someone with Aether? Something like that. Something like that. So the parallel was directly made between that. So I do think Quan is 100% dead on by saying that Yuno's power is the power over Aether. And I think that was supposed to be Liebei's power. But again, it got sucked into this reincarnation spell. So then that way, when we get to the Zagrid arc, we get Yuno, who's... I had to reread it because Yuno was... kind of, how would you say it? I wanted to say like comatose state, but he wasn't in a coma or anything. But he just wasn't responsive. He was almost sleeping like Licht was until Asta came through. And while it would be really nice to say that Asta broke him out of that through the power of friendship, we have to look at the proximity that who we know now as Liebei was to Yuno. As soon as Asta gets close and, the vibes are thrown around, Yuno happens to wake up. Also, in the very first chapter, we see that when Asta was down for the count, Revchi was going to kill him, and Asta was giving up. It shows Yuno saying, "That's my rival," but before Asta receives his grimoire, it shows the necklace. That has the 4 cardinal directions on there. And the grimoire was summoned and given to Asta. So, again, this is a matter of proximity and need. And so, this is where that relationship comes in, where I'm now finding that it might be a lot less of Asta and Yuno and more so about Liebei and Yuno. And the connection that Asta and Yuno have is a little bit more mysterious than both, because there is still something there that we're missing and that I can't quite explain yet. But this is what I think is happening. But the one thing we did not know about at all is how the rest of the life of the surviving twin played out. We know that Tetia survived. We know that the twin got to carry on its genes, thus creating this hybrid elf-human that we see in Elysia. The thing is that when we go back to putting things into perspective, we have to. I think I'll save it for just a bit later after this. I'm going to save it for a little bit after this, but we're going to have to put this into perspective. So I do want to talk about Liebei and the reason he's got no magic. It's something that has been kind of overlooked by me when I give these theories, because I tell you guys that life and light in the lore is passed throughout the tree of life from the Ein Safar, which is above Keter. This is the ultimate being in Kabbalistic lore. The thing is that that's where all life and light stems from, but when you get to the Qliphoth, you don't have that, and actually the Qliphoth yearns for that. They want it, but they don't have it. So we even see here that Liebei is born in the underworld. Born's in quotations on my end. You can't see it, and I'll explain why later. But he's saying that these devils in the underworld just bully each other. If there's someone lower than them, then they will bully them. And I'm thinking, like, okay, this is what we think typical devil behavior is, and that's all well and good. But to what gain? And this is something I didn't start thinking about until literally today. Well, not this part specifically, but further into this theory, because of Buzzard and Broku. They tagged me on a post, and I had to do a little bit more thinking than I'm used to in the morning. So thanks for that, guys. But it was definitely not without some good theory making here. So I want to note that in what we see in these chapters right now, with these lesser devils coming out of the Qliphoth, of the first seal, that these guys aren't displaying magic. If anything, they're displaying that they are just feral, strong, and have probably a good defense. But then we see the mid-tier devils, who one of them definitely does show off some magical attribute, right? Right before luck just bodies them all. So what this tells me is that it is more than likely that these lesser devils, none of them have mana, and it would only make sense that they didn't have mana, if I'm being completely honest. Because where life and light start at Keter, it gets passed down to Malkuth, and then it stops. Because that's where the world is. That's the world of the living. That's kingdom. So it doesn't go any farther than that, which is why we have a dark realm that we know as Klippa. Now, you're probably asking, well, what about the mid-tier devils you just mentioned? And then you have the high-tier devils like Zagrid, Lilith, Nama, all those guys. They clearly have mana. Magicula, Belial, if that is Xenon's devil, Lucifero / Belphegor, they have mana, so what's up with that? So what I'm thinking is there's quite a bit of a difference, because if we look at the lesser tier devils, these guys aren't humanoid whatsoever. They come in all different shapes and sizes that are anything but human. And then you get the mid-tier levels where it's like, okay, these guys look humanoid, but as we see, we have one that's got like roots for legs and fingers, and then you have like a gremlin-looking one with 4 wings, and you have the long neck, no chin guy who got bodied by luck instantly, and then the fat one that looks like he's just growing diseases everywhere. It's a step towards the humanoid shape, but it's not, because they don't have your typical elven ears and those traits. So clearly they're of a lesser tier, of course, but they're higher than your lesser devils, the lowest that had come out, and then they do make this really interesting note, and it's not the first time it's happened. Lilith and Nama say it first, and then these devils mention it again, and that's the fact that the mana in the air tastes good, and that the roots of Klippa are absorbing the mana in the area. So this is to further back the point I made that the Tree of Life supplies mana to everything from the earth and top. That's it. But nothing below. These guys are starving for mana. They're literally starving for mana. So that means they haven't been exposed to that. And this could explain the reason why they want to come to the world of the living. This is the first literal breath and taste of life that they've gotten. For the elves, like the main ones, like Lilith and Nama and Lucifero and stuff, it's probably been a very, very long time, because I would say that they're fallen. We'll call them angels for all intents and purposes, that they have fallen from grace, while these other devils have never experienced it. So again, I'm going to go on record and say I don't think these lesser devils have any mana whatsoever. But then it's the reason of these mid-tier devils. I was thinking, like, why would Tabata show us mid-tier devils just to get bodied a second later? And it's not like they're coming back, because luck is gone. He's on to the next fight. So what was the point of it? And I think it's kind of to make us think, like, well, what is the evolution cycle then of a devil? If they're born in the Klippa, then, and they have no mana, then why are they bullying Liebe? And if he thinks it's for having no mana, I'm gonna tell you guys I think he's wrong. I don't think he actually knows how the underworld works. He's only going off of his experience and what he remembers. So I want to put it to you guys like this, and I did this in another video. One of Tabata's greatest inspirations, aside from Berserk, is Tite Kubo, the creator of Bleach. And one of my favorite parts in Bleach was the origins of the Vastal Lords. And it's the whole evolution process. Now, this is something I got off of Google. This is not my picture. But this is pretty much the last half of the evolution, or, well, the last three quarters, excuse me. Because before Gillians, which is this one right over here, you have hollows. So, and before that, you have just like wandering souls. So what happens in Bleach, in short, is that when you die, you become, just a soul. If you've got like some unfinished business, you're too sad to move on, too upset to move on, given enough time, that soul ends up warping and becoming a hollow. And so this hollow becomes this monstrous beast that just tries to devour any other soul that it can. And then it gets to a point where it's not satisfied with human souls. So it starts devouring other hollows. And through that process, they become Gillians. Now, Gillians are a mass of hollows in one being. And this is pretty much like I guess like the puberty years of the hollow process, if you want to call it that. So what happens is, instead of hormones battling each other, it's a bunch of the personalities of the hollows that were devoured are fighting one another until one comes out on top. Now, this Gillian would have to stay alive long enough for one personality trait to come out on top. And once that happens, they become Ajukas. And that's these guys right here. These guys are the one singular personality that came out on top. And they are now a new level of being who are pretty much vastly strong. But however, they can ascend even further. And the process is that they have to devour more Ajukas in order to do that. But in this process of devouring other Ajukas, they cannot get as much as a single bite taken out of them by another, or else they cannot ascend. Even if they survive the encounter, they would never be able to ascend. So say the Ajuka does devour enough other Ajukas, then you get the Vastal Lords, and that's where we get the Iran cards from. So say that Tabata takes this exact inspiration and applies it to the Clipbot, then we have an evolution cycle of how things can grow in there and how things don't fester and keep populating this what seems like a very limited space. Is because devils can in fact be born out of just the muck and gook of just the underworld. We'll say that. But they are born without mana. They are just very strong beings, and let's say they devour other devils. Let's not say devour, because I'm going to go into something later that'll kind of take that out of the picture. But let's just say they have to defeat other devils. They have to kill another devil, and then once they do that, the power, if not the attributes of that other devil that was killed, if not the attributes, then the raw strength of that other devil could stack onto their own, thus creating an even stronger devil and giving us a pecking order, right? This is something that's mentioned many times, is that there is an exact pecking order in the underworld. So say that happens, and then you go from, like, let's say, like this troll looking guy that was also in Berserk, beating another devil, he becomes stronger, and then he becomes one of the four that came out from the mid-tier devils eventually. And this is all just spitballing, honestly. There's no backing behind this other than the fact that Tabata does take his inspirations from Berserk and Bleach. That's about it. So this is all just speculation on my end, and I'm not saying this is absolute fact, so don't get that twisted or anything like that. So, say that is the case. The thing is let's go back. We look at Liebe. He's obviously very young, and he said he was born there. The thing is like, if a devil successfully kills Liebe, what happens to Liebe? Like, where do they go? Where do they go? Detroit? it seems to me that Liu might be following a different set of rules than these other devils that are actually born in Qliphoth. So instead of actually just dying, he just gets recreated again and has to endure this again. But I think if this is the case, he doesn't remember anything. And he just has to go off of the experiences that he knows then and now. And it would also just make no sense if Liu was born there, because then you'd have to be like literally a helpless child, like an infant in the Qliphoth. Like someone would have to take care of you to some point to get to this level, and I don't know. It's just it just the information that he gave us didn't make a whole lot of sense, and again, I think that's just because he's going off of what he remembers, and I think the reason he doesn't remember everything is because he's probably been killed many times in the Qliphoth, and like I said, this is all speculation. So to get back into this, he remains monolith all the way until he gets yeeted into the world of the living, meets Lucida, Lucifero kills her. Then she puts him in the Grimoire, somehow ends up in the Grand Grimoire Tower in Hage. And then around the age where he would be given a Grimoire, he develops anti-magic. And then Asta gets this Grimoire. But then he goes on to state during their battle, before they became unified, that he had no idea or why the Grimoire chose Asta. And so I want to get into this whole thing. This is the reason why I even thought about this today. And like I said, this stemmed from a post that I was tagged in from Broku and Buzzard on Twitter. And this has been a theory that's been around for a while, but I guess it's kind of bugging people more now. About we have Liu as we see him now, compared to his silhouette form, where it was a lot bigger and it looks slightly different. And while I've never really subscribed to that idea that demon is completely separate from Liu, it could hold some weight. Now I'm going to throw this theory in there. While I don't personally believe this silhouette is actually a separate being, I can give it a reason as to why it is. But I'm going to hop back into my own theory after. So let's say this silhouette is in fact a different being. This being has the same horns as Liu, and seems to have a pretty similar, just I guess, look about it. All right, I think we can all agree on that. So, in my theory, which I do believe is full on true, that Liu is going to be Satan or Lucifer in this story, that would mean that he is at the bottom of the Qliphoth, which means he shares a space with Moloch. And these guys are known as the Thaumiel, which is also known as the contending gods or the twin gods. So then we have this place where I want to go back to, where Lucifero takes over Liu's body before he kills Lucida. And Lucifero says, I can I can take over the bodies of any lower rank devil. So now we have to kind of dissect that and think about, okay, what does he mean? Is it possible that, like I've said in other videos, that this is a Lucifero specific thing? Because again, when we look at the Qliphoth in relation to the Tree of Life, Lucifero corresponds with Raya, who resides in Bina. And we see that Raya can touch a Grimoire and acquire the attributes of the Grimoire in its full. Maybe not at its fullest potential, but as far as the spells go. And this makes sense because Bina is the husk of understanding. And this means that once you touch the Grimoire, he understands how to use the spells within that Grimoire and the attributes. So that totally makes sense, which Then we get to who I believe actually has Lucifero, which is Morris, who we see is transferring not only magic but also knowledge. So we have to learn whether that is actually Lucifero's magic or if that's Morris's magic, but it seems like it is Lucifero's magic, for now at least. So we have to figure out, give and take, is this a high rank to low rank thing, or is it just a Lucifero specific thing? But let's say it's just high to low rank. That means that Lucifero can take over, let's say, Lilith and Nama. He can do either one of those. He could do, or unless he means like just mid-tier and lower, like we see the four that come out, he can do either one of those guys. Any of the lesser devils that came out of the seal, because they're all below his clip. So if we take that and apply it in the situation, then the only other person that would be well, then it doesn't work, because technically Liebe would be weaker as a child, and he's also got no mana. So there could be some explanations for that, because, like I've said, Liebe would rank higher than Lucifero technically. But again, since he's a child with no mana, it's kind of null and void. So I think you can kind of bend the rules there, which gives way to some confusion within the story, with all these other devils that don't have any idea who this guy is or why he's got what he's got. So I think it still can make sense. But if I'm being honest, we're kind of forcing things. So to go further into that, the only other devil that can do this would be Moloch. And in my previous videos, I do explain how I think Liebe got anti-magic. And just very briefly, we know that Keter on the Tree of Life can absorb light and life from the Ein Sefer. And then if you apply that to the shadow, which is the Thaumiel, they would be absorbing what is not life and light, which is the exact opposite, which is not light, and anything that will break down light, or in this case, mana. So I think that's why Liebe got it. But if there's a separate devil there too, then maybe that devil could have it too. So what I'm proposing is this. If this theory happens to be true, then we have to accept that Liebe has no mana still. And this anti-magic is not his. Because there was a point that was brought up in this post, which is very true. This is something I've been thinking about, but I didn't think about it in depth until today. Is that during this contract that Liebe and Asta are in, not the Union, but when Asta sacrificed his arm to help out Yami, why did it affect Liebe as well? When you make a deal with the devil takes from you and then just gives you power. So it shouldn't be a two-way street. And it shouldn't have affected Liebe like that. Because if Liebe is the primary source of the power, then why would it affect Liebe as it did? It doesn't seem to make too much sense. Unless there is another devil at play. And this is where we get to the silhouette. So what I'm thinking is, if this silhouette is a completely separate devil, then this devil would have to be Moloch. And Moloch is the one with anti-magic and not Liebe. And Liebe is, in fact, magicless. And this would fall in line with the fact that I think that Yuno ends up getting Liebe's magic. Yeah, it's getting kind of weird, but Liebe doesn't have the magic he should, which would leave him monoless. And the fact that this affected his body could mean that if Moloch doesn't have an actual physical form, he could be using Liebe to come into the physical and then take advantage of Asta. So this could turn out bad for not only Asta but Liu Bei as well. And so then we get to like, now we have to backtrack and look at everything that we have already read, which is something we usually do anyway for this series. We have to look at the motives, right? And one of the bigger parts is that we see in the battle with Dante, when Asta was getting handled, we see right after the Berserk form expires, he's pretty much saying, "I'm going to kill you. I want to kill you," and he's extremely upset, and he's everywhere with it. But the thing is that it doesn't fit Liu Bei's MO. Like, yeah, he is. He can be pompous. He can be cocky. But to be this bloodthirsty still doesn't quite fit his MO, which is strange. And the only reason I would give towards this being a separate being is that this is not only Liu Bei feeling this way towards Lucifero, but this is Moloch feeling this way towards Lucifero, because let's just look at it this way. I find it hard to believe that all of these devils, any of them, are just working together in peace. There's got to be some strife, because devils are known to have big egos, and they want what they want. They're selfish. So for this whole plan to go on without any sort of backlash between demons or devils would be pretty surprising to me. And I think some of that animosity came from Moloch because Lucifer, or Lucifero in the story, wants to be the top dog, and he would be if Moloch didn't exist or wasn't in the picture. So I'm thinking he just wants Lucifero out the picture so he can rule. Because when we get to the etymology of Moloch's name, it means ruler, but this isn't the original meaning of the word Moloch. And so I'm trying to decide if I want to get into like this right now. So yeah, let's do that and we'll circle back. So when I talk about Moloch, I want to talk about this surviving twin, because that's who I believe Moloch would be. And I feel like it's really simple, but also kind of convoluted at the same time. If Moloch is the surviving twin, why is he in the Qliphoth? And this is where we have to put everything into perspective. And I want to start with the etymology of his name. So just like with Lucifer is the bearer of light, or the bringer of light, Moloch, the original meaning was the gift or present. And then it became the ruler, and then sacrifice. So I'm thinking that the names were going to be given to Liu Bei and whoever this other character would be with Liu Bei, which I think is Moloch. I think the names are going to be given to them because this is the bridge from elf to human. This is the bridge to peace, ultimately. So to have the bearer of light and then a gift, a present, this is the gift to the world, the present, and this other being is bringing light to the world. This is the bridge to peace. But then the elf massacre happens. Now, remember everything I said and putting into perspective as far as Liu Bei goes. Think about it for the surviving twin. Imagine surviving that, getting raised by a human mother, then realizing like, okay, we're both kind of different here, because we know that these hybrids are probably a lot stronger than both elf and human. That's usually how hybrids work, right? So then questions are going to start being asked, and then there's probably not a whole lot of other elves to kind of look at and be like, okay, what's going on? So then let's say this kid gets to a good solid age to start asking those those questions. Then Tetia reveals that, okay,
your father and your entire family, your aunts and your uncles, are all dead due to humans, and it's because the the devil behind it, or I don't know if she knew about Zagrid or not. I mean, it can go both ways. I did make a video on Tetia either knowing about Zagrid or not knowing about Zagrid in one of my earlier videos, so go check that out. But it works either way, honestly. But let's just say, to make this kind of short, that she did not know about Zagrid. That, in her perspective, humans killed them, because we know Tetia didn't go back to the Clover Kingdom. There's a mystery about what happened to Tetia. So we have to assume that she probably went to Elysia, where, I would assume the Dryad maybe called out to her somehow, much like I believe it called out to Noelle, to bring that child there, because that child would then hold the throne to Keter, which is important to the Tree of Life. Now, imagine this kid gets the story that they were slain by humans, and that's why they don't live amongst humans, and that's why there's not a whole lot of elves that we know of. How would you take that? I mean, I don't see a whole lot of protagonists being born out of like, oh, humans slayed us, let's make friends with them. I don't see that happening, even though it is quite obvious that he ended up mating with someone because they had kids. But I mean, is it plausible that this surviving twin waged war against humans? Because remember, in the very first episode, they talk about, in the first chapter, demons almost overtook the world. Demons, plural. And we only knew about Licht. So is it possible that the first advent was due because of him? And through his usage of forbidden magic, holding the throne of Keter, nonetheless, put him at the very bottom of the Tree of Death, making him the absolute ruler, or should have been. But the difference is, for some reason, he doesn't seem to have a body. And this is why he's using Liebe. And while Liebe might think that this is just like the manifestation, or I guess his malice, kind of coating his person and giving him, that gave him the access to the power, it's actually his brother that's doing this and is possibly screwing him over. Now, if we keep going with this does give us twin gods, literally twins, and then also contending forces, where one would want to defeat Lucifero for the throne of Klippat to make sure no one overthrows him. Liebe wants to defeat Lucifero to avenge Lucida, and he also wants to rid the world of just devils, period, because they're all like that to him. So this does create contending forces where Liebe wants to break down what the other wants to rule over. That's kind of what I feel, if that is the case. I don't think that's the case. I just wanted to make a compelling argument for it. But I do think, and I'm going to say this now, that Moloch is the other twin. And that twin went rogue after we found out what happened. And probably tried waging war on humans. Which is why we just don't... Why we refer to Lucifero being the big bad in Nox's picture of the Klippat. They either don't know about him, or Lucifero is just trying to rule everything while escaping the Klippat, so he doesn't have to be under Moloch. But not sure how it's going to work, because Moloch is going to get released on the last day with Lucifero and Belial. So that should be kind of interesting. It could be a fight that ends up causing everyone to flee, which would give us the overseas arc. As you can tell, the last part of this theory is kind of, I wouldn't say falling apart, but it's getting harder to put together, just because we don't have enough information in the story yet. All we have is lore, and then just the very little that we do have in the story. But I think it could be very simple, as Tabata telling us that Tetia had twins, and because what's the point if there's no significance? What is the exact point? But off of the silhouette being a separate demon, if with this other twin being Moloch, and Liebe not knowing why the Grimoire chose Asta, I think it would make sense because Moloch carried on his genes, and his genes, of course, just went on. And I think it's pretty apparent that Asta and are descendants of this being, just different branches, of course. And he recognized that, and it just helps that Liebe is in the Five Leaf, and it was Licht's grimoire before, and and Asta are also blood relatives, and then got the power that Liebe should have had. I mean, it all just kind of fit together perfectly, if that is the case. And that's kind of, I guess that's kind of just what I'm getting at. I think it's Moloch who chose Asta. It wasn't Liebe, it wasn't the grimoire acting separately. It was Moloch who did that. So that's kind of where my head's at. If I want you to take anything from this theory, it's that the twin gods of the story is going to be Moloch, who ended up surviving long enough to fall and become a dark elf and become the devil, and then Liebe, who is going to be Lucifer, and not Lucifero, but Lucifer, in this story. And I guess while we're kind of on the subject here, why I don't agree with the silhouette being like something else entirely is just because Zagred's silhouette looked pretty different from who he is. I mean, we look at just look at him. It looks just different. Okay, so I think this is just an attribute that happens when they're in the underworld and not in the world of the living. I think that's just how they take shape. I don't think it's a huge deal. But like I said, it could be onto something. But to go into something that I forgot to put in is this scene specifically, where Zagred meets with Liebe. This is within the grimoire, and if we go back to what I said about Tabata possibly taking influence from Tite Kubo from Bleach, with the whole process of a hollow becoming a Vastal Lord later on, then this shows that the whole point of this interaction was that this could have been a way that Liebe got stronger, was because he offed the devil. So that's kind of where I'm at. I kind of hope that's how devils work, because that was honestly such a banger thing from Bleach, and I'm not a huge Bleach fan, but that specific arc hit real hard because they went all out with all the fleshing out of the characters and how they came to be. I thought it made a lot of sense, and they did a really well done job of that. So if he took anything from Kubo, I hope it is that. Now, what was I going to say? Okay. So we have to also think about the saying, as above, so below. Like we see on the clip art, is like how I was just saying, how Raya and Lucifer correspond with similar magic attributes. Not the exact same, but similar. Fuck, I lost my train of thought again. Okay, so Zagred escapes the clip art, and he's manipulating all these people and things, right? But to what avail? What was Zagred's actual purpose? Did he just want to come to the world? He wanted to just leave the palace, the Shadow Palace. He was just going to dip. Like, if no one stood in his way, he was just going to open the door and fly away. What was he going to do if he didn't just want to kill everyone? What was the plan? So Zagred was here for something a bit deeper than just like, okay, I'm living. Because if that was the case, like, why not just try and make friends? Like, hey, I know what I did was kind of messed up, but what's done is done. Can we be friends? Like, I mean, that would have been a better bet than like playing around with people and trying to fight top tier mages was just an awful decision. So, I think there's a little bit more, but go back to as above, so below. If Zagred's out here manipulating things, what if there's a counter force, a light force, also manipulating things? Because there's this whole question of fate, and this is something that I've talked about a few times on this channel, is that things just seem to work out kind of perfectly. Yami is finding all of these arcane mages and making them black bulls, and it just so happens that this luck kid is, possibly a Raijin / Thor. He's got at least one of 3 of the Sister of Fates. If Gray is an actual Sister of Fate, which I do believe she is, he's got 2 out of 3, which means he controls 2/3 of how life can work, if they learn how to grasp their powers. Then you have this guy with the magic mirror eye to other dimensions. Who else do we have? As far as the freaking gatekeeper for Fenrir, the key holder to Ragnarok in the Black Bulls. And then you have Asta, who's this mysterious kid who seems to be attached to all this other stuff. It just so happens to be that way. And it just so happened that Lucida, of all people, came across Licht's 5-leaf grimoire as if it was just laying around. I don't see Lucida just digging in a hole in the ground and like, oh, a 5-leaf grimoire. Oh my gosh. I don't see that. There's another force at play here that is setting things in a way to counteract what these devils are doing. That's what I believe. Again, as above, so below. So instead of all these instances of like coincidences, I think these are very intentional. And instead of getting front loaded on that story, what we got on the front load was Zagred manipulating this stuff. And instead, we're going to have some other light force. I don't know what light force that would be. But something very interesting about Zagred is that Zagred seems to be the only devil so far that has Japanese backgrounds. He's got Kododama magic. And this is creation via fiat, which means you can speak it into creation. And this is very special. And this is not something exactly in the clip art. If you look at the descriptions, you have things like the Smiters, the Ravens, the Poison of God, the Devourers. He doesn't really fall under any of that. And it's really interesting. So that's why I kind of made my Zagred video and attributed him to having more to do with this this land that Yami comes from. But just go watch that video, I guess. But that's kind of what I wanted to bring to you guys. Again, Moloch is going to be Liabe's brother. I can almost guarantee this, that it's not just some random devil. Man, if anything random happens in anime, tag me in it, because this has been a series that is very well and thought out and very intentional. So I think we got enough clues to give us that, and that would solidify our creation story to give us the next part, which could end up being Ragnarok if this isn't considered Ragnarok. Hopefully it isn't, because then that would give us something more to look forward to in the series, because we do still have Charmy's role in this. She doesn't just arbitrarily have Fenrir for nothing. So we're going to find out more. Don't worry. But like I said, a lot of this is speculation. A lot of this is headcanon. I'm not saying this is complete fact. If anything, if I would say any part of this is fact, it's going to be just the fact that Liebe is for sure the part of the Thaumiel. For sure. And is Licht's son. I'm going to stand on that 100% until Tabata proves me wrong. Other than that, the rest of this is definitely speculation. But I will say I do believe, I'm at 80% right now, that the other twin that survived fell and is Moloch in this story. But we'll see. We will see. So you guys tell me what you think in the comment section below or on Twitter. Looking forward to it because I know you guys don't really agree with Liu Bei being part of the Thaumiel, or being Licht's son, rather, being Licht's son. But hopefully this at least sounds good, and would make for some good writing. This is how I would write it if I were writing Black Clover. But Tabata's going to have his own ideas, and I am totally open to that, just as we all should be. So, again, let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Find me on Twitter, let me know. Other than that, thank you guys for tuning in. This has been Jack Goes to Go. You either know or you don't.